Father David here. It is Sunday and time for your weekly sermon. And here we are in the first Sunday of Advent, starting now this year with Matthew's Gospel and Jesus speaking about end times. The title of today's sermon is Ready? Well, welcome to the season of Advent. It's the time when our Gospel guide turns from Luke to Matthew as a new church year begins. And Advent is a season when, more than any other church season, we will spend time thinking about endings, our own individual endings, our collective endings. Scott Jansen, a hospice social worker, tells this story. For months I visited 92-year-old Evan, and for months he had been praying to die. He had colon cancer, and he's tired. His life is tedious, meaningless, nothing to look forward to, and sometimes he speaks of committing suicide. But today, he's changed. He's happy and upbeat, and I'm wondering what's going on. Did he actually make a decision to end his life? You seem different today, I ask casually. What's happening? And he looks at me with a cryptic look and says, "Do you believe in ghosts?" Now, that's not the first time a patient has asked me this. People often have unusual experiences when the end of life draws near. There's all kinds of ghosts, I say seriously. What kind are you talking about? He asks, well, you remember me telling you about the war? How could I forget? He traces his lifelong depression to his time as a supply officer for a World War II combat hospital. The war convinced him that nothing good could ever come from human beings. Those terrible years left him afraid and alone. I remember, I say. There's something I left out, he says, and he begins to reminisce about a cold autumn day with casualties flooding in while he and his compatriots scrambled to transport blood-soaked men on stretchers from rail cars to triage. And in triage, those with a chance are separated from those who don't have one. So I'm hustling all day, he says, and by the time the last train arrives, my back is broken, my hands are numb. And what happened when that last train got there, I ask. We were hauling this guy, and my grip on his stretcher slipped. He starts to cry. He hit the ground, and his innards just came oozing out from his open belly. And then he died. And later that night, I'm on my cot crying my eyes out over this whole rotten mess. I'm shaking so hard my bed is shaking. And then I look up, and there's this guy sitting at the end of my cot. He's wearing a World War I uniform, helmet and all, but he's covered in light, glowing in the dark. What's he doing, I ask. Evan starts to cry and then laugh at the same time. He's looking at me with an intense love. I can feel it, and I've never felt that kind of love before. What did it feel like? I can't say, but I felt like I was actually worth something, like all the pain and cruelty isn't what's real. What is real, I ask. Evan replies, knowing that no matter how screwed up and cruel the world looks, on some level, we're all loved. We're all connected. Years later, I was cleaning out my mom's stuff after she died, and I found this old photograph. It's the glowing guy from my bed. And on the back, in my mom's handwriting, it says, Uncle Calvin, killed during World War I. We talk some more, and then I ask, but what's that have to do with your better mood? And Evan whispers, staring out the window, he's back. Last night, at the foot of my bed, but now he's talking. What did he say? He says he's here with me. He's going to help me over the hill when the time comes to go. Freddie Buchner tells of a friend who dies in his sleep unexpectedly, and not long after that paid a visit to Fred during one of his dreams. And in the dream, the friend is wearing a blue knit sweater. The next morning, Fred wakes up, and there on the floor by his bed is a thread of blue knit. Did it come from the sweater his friend was wearing? Why tell you these stories on a Sunday morning when the gospel lesson is about the end of the world? Perhaps because whether it's the end of the world that Jesus is telling us about this morning, or the end of our world, when we will each close our eyes for the last time, we don't know when that day will come. We don't have to look far to realize the uncertainty of life. Just this past week, 2 very young National Guards folks were murdered on a Washington, D.C. street. Our own military is murdering alleged drug runners on the high seas, violating U.S. law and international law. A dear friend has a recurrence of cancer, and now it's fatal. The season of Advent is the season to slow down and remember that we are mortal, and that in remembering to pause and perhaps reassess how we are living our lives. Am I ready for the end? Is the question of the day. Ready meaning, am I doing the deeds of mercy, forgiveness, and peace that characterize kingdom people? Too many people think of the end times as a reason to exploit the earth and each other, because after all, the end is coming. But others see the end times as a good reason to walk away from society and family. But what Jesus is urging his disciples to see is that the end is not about walking away from our obligations to each other or the planet. It's about encouraging us to do the gospel, one day at a time as best as we can. And we do the gospel by honing in on what Jesus says at the end of Matthew's gospel. When the Son of Man comes in glory and all the angels with him, before him will be gathered all the nations, and he will separate them like sheep from goats. And then the king will say to the sheep on his right, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you. For I was hungry, and you fed me, thirsty, and you gave me drink, a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was sick, and you visited me." In the stories that began this homily, there is a sense of kindness that awaits all of us in the next life, that love and connection are the essence of what is fundamentally real as a piece of blue-knit thread. And isn't that what Jesus is getting at when he speaks of God's judgment? He's explaining to us that we are called as creatures made in God's image and likeness to be kind and connected, especially to the least among us. And if we can nurture kindness and connection, if we can trust that kindness and connection are the cornerstone of reality, then whether we live or die, we will come to know that peace and that joy which passes all understanding. God bless you all.